Quick question. What are these? One of the most common examples that is brought up when the topic of anime localization is brought up is the example of jelly donuts in the English dub of Pokemon. Obviously, we know these are not jelly donuts, these are onigiri. However, the question that is brought up is simply why on earth would you translate onigiri into jelly donuts when they have quite literally no correlation at all? As someone with a master's degree in translation, I thought that I would try to answer the question. One of the most common or popular theories in translation studies is Skopos theory, which simplified essentially argues that before translating, you must first determine the purpose and aim of the translation itself. I think a lot of people misinterpret translation as simply being translating a source language into the target language without taking anything else into consideration. For example, if I were to translate English idioms, I would not translate them directly, and instead I would take into consideration what the idiom itself is actually trying to say, what the purpose of it actually is. For example, the phrase "it's raining cats and dogs," if I were to say this in Thai, I would not translate this literally because it would sound quite frankly insane. When you translate it literally into the target language, it does not convey the same meaning as the original. To tie this back into the Jelly Donuts translation, their thought process was probably something along these lines. The aim of the English translation is probably just to convey the original story as best as possible, however, keeping into consideration the target audience. Now, Pokemon is primarily a show that is enjoyed by children, and back in the 2000s, I am guessing that they assumed that most children within the Western English speaking sphere would not know what onigiri is and they would not know what these are. So, in their mind, when they're translating, they're not thinking about sticking as close to the original as possible. They are thinking, how can we translate this source text in a way that shows that this is food that you can snack on easily, but is food that the target audience, which in this context is most likely the Western English speaking audience, how can we translate this food item in a way that is still easily digestible and easily understood by the target audience? I'm not saying that that is how they thought, that is me just assuming that that is how they thought. As times have changed, the world has since been extremely globalized, and the majority of people, no matter where you go, probably know what onigiri is. They have some sort of idea of items within Japanese cuisine. If this were to be translated now, they probably wouldn't actually translate it. They would probably either borrow the original Japanese word and then put it into English, or they would simply call it the most equivalent English version. And they just call them rice balls.